didn't really know LeDroit Park. I knew, obviously, I've done quite a number of properties in DC, but this particular neighborhood I wasn't really too familiar with, but I knew it was a pretty decent neighborhood, pretty good neighborhood, and so I was interested.
So let me interject real quick. So Joe's, hey, how you doing, guys? Joe's been investing in DC for almost 30 years. Mm-hmm. And for him to say he didn't know a particular neighborhood tells you something. And what it should reinforce to everyone is, you know, whether it's Baltimore or DC or PG County, you know, neighborhood specificity, you know, is a certain market within that neighborhood. And you really have to make sure that before you go into an area where you don't know, that you either rely on your experience and your team's experience, or if you don't have the experience, that you find a partner, a deal partner, or someone that has that experience you can execute and make sure you have a successful job.
Yeah. So, you know, so we talked, and obviously it came down to numbers. And the first thing I asked Frank was, what are houses selling for around here? And he said, what did he say?
1.4, 1.5, and he said, I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, he came with some numbers, but I said, no way. No, absolutely no way. So he was trying to convince me that houses in this area were going to, in the 1+ you know, price point. And I said, there's no way that, you know, people are paying that kind of money to be around here. So I kind of dismissed what he said. And, and so on. So I said, well, in the word, you know, what's the worst, absolute worst case scenario for a house like this? And this, I haven't seen the house yet at this point. And he said, well, you should at least get 1.2 or something. I think, well, absolute worst case, you'll get 1.2. And I still dismissed it. I said, okay, that way I'll put in my numbers, what, $1 million. Because I know if his worst case scenario is 1.2, my absolute drop dead bottom line, if the world's crashing, it'll be $1 million. So I used $1 million as my starting point for the actual repair value. Because, you know, he assured me that there's no way you can go below 1.2. Okay? And then the next thing would be, okay then, well, what's the condition of the house? And we've done several deals. I mean, I've bought some houses from Frank, which is, let's just say it's in pretty bad shape, you know. I mean, Jenny's familiar with Hobart Place, which is a house in northwest DC. That one, you know, mold went down, the roof was caving in, you know, the smell was bad, everything. So I'm familiar with the worst case scenarios for houses. So I asked him, is it as bad as that? And he said, no, it's not as bad as that, but it's in pretty sad shape. The house had been abandoned. The family, I think, had owned it for a number of years. And one of the parents passed away, and it went to the children, and one of them decided they wanted to rehab the house. And they started the rehab. And they, you know, and obviously they did something, and they bailed out. It was just way over their head, and so they just wanted out. They just wanted money and walk off, you know, walk away and just call it a day. So that's the history behind that. And I said, well, in that case, then what do you think the repair cost would be? And I think you came up with some, what do you say, like 100K or something. Yeah, so he said 100K. Is that? Oh, you can easily get it done with 100K, you know? Just to pay coffee, you'll be done. Like a true wholesaler. You know the story, the wholesaler.
Yeah, you rehab for the least and sell for the most. Right? That's how it works.
Instead of 1.4, you spend 100,000, you call it a day. And so on. So he said around 100K. I said, there's no way you can do 100K. I think I said, okay, then the worst case is probably around 180 something. Worst case. And so based on that, let's just say 200 is what I estimated the repair cost would be. And the $1 million price point for the after repair value, then it became a matter of what's the price we could, you know, I could buy it for. And we went back and forth for a while. Ultimately, I bought it for $550,000. Okay, so that's the contracted price, is $550,000 for this house. And that's based on an assumption of a $200,000 repair cost and a $1 million price after repair value. Okay, So that was me going into this project. Okay, and the numbers appeared to work based on that. So I said, okay, let's go. It's a go. And can everyone turn their cell phones off, please?
Yeah.
Please. And so that's what we came in at. Is that?
So, based off of your worst case 1 million ARV, buying for 550, 200 reno. So you were roughly 75%, to value in terms of your maximum allowable offers, if you look at it that way.
Something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
In that ballpark.
Yeah, I have a program which I use. I program the numbers, and it spits out. You can throw in different case studies or scenarios, and it appeared to work based on those numbers.
Right. And the reason why I wanted to break it down in that language, a lot of people here are using and familiar with MAO, maximum allowable offer, and when you get into markets, highly competitive markets like DC, it's very. I forgot who told me this recently, but I think it was Marcella saying, I can never find deals at 65% Mayo in DC, and it's because they're like, a rare bird. It's almost impossible to find them. So you're going to find the deals are going to be tighter margins, but if you're able to execute, your team's able to execute, and you have a dual exit strategy where even if you can't sell it, and we're going to talk about the exit strategy as we go through the Power of 4. Even if you can't sell it, your dual exit strategy option of renting it, if you can't sell it, even if that works, then tighter margins are something that becomes palatable, right? You can then go to where you buy for 550, reno for 200, and then have $1 million ARV be your target. Okay, so let's go ahead and move into the funding portion. Okay.
Before you-
you have a question? Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
question.
We're going to take questions on each phase before we move on. Go ahead, Yvonne.
So, did you have a way to get to hard numbers for your 200,000? And how did that compare to the actual cost?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about the actual when we get to the fixing phase. As you know, I'll just give you a little teaser. As you know, anyone who's done a rehab project, 3 things are guaranteed to happen.
Yep.
Guaranteed. Always happen. One, it always costs you more. I've never done a project where it's cost me less. 2, it's going to take you longer than what you thought. I've never done a project where it's less than that. And thirdly, which I've kind of got over that now, I don't have those issues, but if you're starting out, you'll have this problem, which is you'll have a falling out with your contractor. Okay, so those 3 things are usually going to guarantee to happen until you kind of develop those relationships. So that's a little teaser until we talk about the construction.
What do the comparables actually end up being in the area?
Well, I'll talk about that at the end, what the final ARVs are and things like that. Okay. Yeah. But yeah, the comps were higher. I mean, what Frank said was in fact true.
Oh, that gave you nice margin. Good to hear it.
So I have to apologize to Frank. I dismissed this initial estimate. But in fact, it was true,
Any other questions on how the deal was found? Or the due diligence leading into the funding phase? All right, we'll move on to how the deal was funded.
Okay. So let's just do the assumption of $550,000 for the acquisition, $200,000 for the renovation, and you got holding costs, and you got taxes, insurance, and all that kind of stuff. So let's just say $50,000 for that. Okay. So that's a total of $800,000 that's needed. Okay. So the issue becomes, where am I going to get $800,000 from in order to buy this house, rehab this house, hold this house, and take it all the way to the finish line? Okay? I'm not as wealthy as Andre, so I can't just pull money out of the hat, so I had to figure out where the money's going to come from. And so I have and based on experience now, I've developed relationships with different sources. I've used hard money before once, and you know, it was okay. It serves a purpose. I mean, you know, if that's what you got, that's what you got. You know, you got to start where you can get the money. The biggest lesson learned from that experience was at the settlement table when I sold the house. You know, it's like one for you, one for me. You know, so the cost of the financing was very high. But again, it's nothing negative. It was just that's what I realized from it. So from my perspective, the issue becomes how do I drive the cost of financing down? Okay, and so what I did was to start developing relationships with financial institutions because they have the cheapest money. So so for this one, I have a line of credit. For this one, I use Industrial Bank. I have a line of credit with them, and they funded 75% of the acquisition and 70% of the renovation. Okay? Don't go calling Industrial Bank.
I was going to say, there's,
Please,
All right,
don't
what's
do
your
that.
number?
No, don't do that because it's not going to get you anywhere. It's all about relationships.
Yeah.
Okay? If you don't have those relationships, you're wasting your time. And
well, it's primarily about relationships, but then also it's about qualifications, quite honestly. Skill set, proof that you have successfully renovated properties before, financial worthiness in terms of capital reserves and things of that nature. So yes, to Joe's point, you know, you can, whether it's Industrial Bank, Eagle Bank, or many of these other community banks, yes, it can be a great way to drive down the cost of funds. But no, it's not for everyone because everyone's not going to have access to that type of capital. And so, with that, I'll...
Yeah. So it's all about relationships. And you got a question?
Yeah, question, the relationship, is that the branch manager, the portfolio manager, who's the person, who's the contact position at these institutions?
Well, I said Industrial is just one of several banks I've developed a relationship with. Okay. And what I've learned from that is that you need to identify, first of all, what are the needs? What are they looking for? You know, whenever you're trying to do business with somebody, especially with a bank, you got to look at things from their perspective.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are they looking for from a borrower? Okay. And you know, once I understood that, it's just a matter of positioning myself, first of all, to ensure that I met the criteria that they were looking for. Okay? There's no point just going to a bank. You go to the game with a basketball and they're playing soccer. You know what I mean? It's two different languages, two different sports, and so on. So if I'm going to play basketball, I need to know the rules of basketball. So when I go on the court, we're in the same game. Okay? So I did quite a bit of research, understanding what the needs of some of these commercial banks were. Okay? And then once I put together a packet which summarized my experience, my track record, various projects I've done, and things like that. The next step was, who are the key people in that bank who I should approach? Okay, it just so happened for Industrial, one of the VPs there, he used to work at another bank where I already had a line of credit, so we had an established relationship, and so I contacted him. And since he knew me, he knew the track record I have, that was my entree into the institution. So in essence, you try to position yourself, or you try to identify people or persons in the bank who give you that warm introduction. And because it's a small world, people know good persons, you know. And so if you don't know anybody, then obviously you've got to try to navigate yourself through that sort of that track, I suppose. So it's a VP, and we had a relationship before. I went there with my head high, back straight. I mean, I knew what they were looking for. Okay, I didn't have to go there begging for money. And so that's what we did. I went in there. I was able to, get a line of credit. In this case, it's for $1 million. And so that was the basis for that relationship with that bank, and that's how the relationship developed for this project.
Thank you.
Okay. So that was, sorry.
What kind of collateral did you use on the line of credit?
The line of credit, the collateral is, you have what they call the personal guarantee.
Yeah.
So I personally have to sign on it. Although the loans are in my entity, okay, it's not like a residential loan where you put in your name. Most residential banks won't fund it unless it's in your personal name. Commercial banks are okay with that, with the entities, but they want to have what they call a personal guarantee. So in the event the entity goes kaput, they want to go after you personally. So that's what we have to do, a personal guarantee on top of the entity for this financing. So that's part of the financing was institutional money, but that's not funded the entire project.
And then, I'm sorry, and just to add to that, of course, in addition to the personal guarantee, of course, the house, it's obvious, is used and secured as collateral.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
they have a first lien position on this house.
When you draw
Personal.
down against the line, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so they're in first lien position on the house. That's the institution, financial institution. But that doesn't fund the entire project. That's not the whole $800,000. There's a delta there. Okay. So the next part is how do I fill that delta? And I have a joint venture program where I give people the opportunity to look over my shoulders as we do a deal. And so within that, I have some private investors. Okay, these are people who know who I am. They want to be a part of the project, and they bring money to the table. I pay them 8% on their return on their money, and in exchange for them to be able to see the entire transaction from start to finish. Because in my opinion, really the best way to learn this stuff, probably the only way, is to do a deal. You know, you can read books all day long, you can go to CDs, you can go to boot camps. At the end of the day, you learn by doing. And if you can't do, then you look over the shoulder of somebody else as they do. Okay? And so what I do is to give people the opportunity to do that. So I have private investors who provide money for that. And so in this case, I had a few private investors, and then the delta, because that's not all of it, I then bring in my own money for the table. So the financing for this project is in three parts. There's a financial institution, there's private investors, and there's my personal money. And just a little teaser, the rehab itself came up to $350,000. Okay, so I estimated 200. I budgeted for 200. I financed it for 200. My bank account said 200, and it came to 350. So there's a delta of $150,000. Okay, and that had to be funded because I had to get to the finish line. Okay, and there's plenty of projects around here that start and they don't finish because they're out of money. And there's several houses down. There's one across the street, which is a testament to that. So there's a $150,000 delta, and I don't like to go back to my private investors once the project is started and say, "Oops, oops." I have to dig deep and see it through. Okay, so that $150,000 is funded by me.
So let me tie a couple things in. So I think we had a question about the community banks, about the relationships, and then Joe expounded upon, how you just can't go straight to the community banks. You have to first of all have a personal guarantee, but you have to have the credit worthiness and the portfolio worthiness in terms of history and experience to actually have the personal guarantee mean something to the bank, right? So if someone was totally green, new, and said, I want to fix and flip in DC, right? And you go to a community bank and you're trying to get the same type of financing that an experienced developer would get, you're not going to be able to because you don't have the track record and you don't have what the bank is looking for in order to mitigate the risk. Okay, so your personal guarantee as a new investor is not going to mean much to them. Your lack of experience is going to mean something to them in terms of it's a risky proposition for them. So Joe talked about having a JV partner program. I have a JV partner program. There are ways for people to actually get into deals like this, okay, when you are new, looking to get experience, So you can walk through a deal from finding it, through the funding, through the fixing and the flipping. And then ultimately you start to build through proxy connection to whoever has the experience. You start to build your experience in participation with deals. You do that a couple times over, 2, 3, 4 times over, then whether the relationship is debt or equity, that becomes, a distinction without a difference really. Ultimately, you start to build a portfolio of deals that you can then say that you've done, okay, or you have participated in, even if not the lead developer. And this is how you slowly build a portfolio of experience for yourself, so that you can ultimately have the confidence to step out and do your own project, or to find a deal and bring it to Joe or myself or someone else that's seasoned and partner with them in a different capacity. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to tie that all in from the finding of the deal. Like Frank, for example, has been a regular attendee of the deals meetup. Obviously, he's done multiple deals with Joe. But when you continue to come back and do deals with experienced developers, you then can, start to structure the deals, differently as you bring them forward. So that's the finding, the funding. Any questions on the funding before we move on to the fixing portion? Carl first.
Yes, you spoke about how you had allocated $200,000 for repair, and it came up to $350,000. What steps would you been able to do to make sure that the repair value would have been the amount that you would have been expecting?
Okay.
Versus saying like,
Yeah, I'll talk about. Yeah, I'll briefly summarize that. I'll probably go into a bit more detail on that in the construction part. But essentially, this is the first time I played in the $1.1 million plus price point. Okay, all my other projects were in DC. They're like $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 max. Okay, so that's the price point. I'm used to. I have the experience. I have the track record. I can do that, with the almost by the back of my hand. Okay, this is another level, and I've never tackled a project like this before. So I was going in there based on the experience of a smaller, lower price point. When you're in the 1.2, 1.3, 1.5 price point, you have a different type of buyer. They're more sophisticated. Their expectations are higher. I mean, there's certain things you can get away with in a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 house that you can't get away with in a $700,000. The fixtures.
You mean like instead of a $3,000 fridge, it's an $8,000 fridge.
Yeah,
or just it's one example.
Instead of granite, they expect quartz. People expect a roof deck. Okay, when I bought the house, the roof deck wasn't even on the horizon.
Right.
Okay, it wasn't in there. I never done one before. Okay, so I didn't expect to budget that in. Okay, I mean, simple things. Even like the railing over there, the metal railing. I mean, that's not something I normally do.
Right.
Okay, I normally just get a wood rail and just call it a day. $50 rail, $20 ballast and call it a day.
So to summarize, the finishes, higher end finishes, puts a premium on the rental costs.
Right.
And then, quite honestly, I think you'll agree with this. If you are off in terms of your numbers, when you're playing around in the $500,000 price range, $500,000 to let's say $750 ARV, and let's say you have budgeted $150,000 for renovation, right? So if on a percentage basis, if you're off by 10%, 15%, your base, is real small. Once you get up into a $250,000 renovation and you're off by 20%, that number is just bigger, just based on the dollar size of renovation. And then, of course, when you're dealing with premium finishes, everything just starts to mushroom, and balloon. And so that connected with the fact that you're tailoring it to a higher end buyer, and it just craftsmanship, materials, everything just drives that number through the roof.
Yeah.
Question, the 3 parts, we've got the line of credit, we have with the personal guarantee, have the private investors, and you said plus your personal money, is that from your entity, or you had to take that 150 out of your pocket?
No, it's out of my pocket. I mean, my wife knows the story very well.
You want what?
Exactly, yeah. I'm tired of drinking water, you know. Eat breakfast dinner, you know. You have to reach the finish line.
Yeah.
You know, you start a project of this magnitude. There's a lot of money on the line here. I've got private investors. You know, it's other people's money. You got to see it through. And as I said, I don't want to go around back to the person I borrowed money from, whether it be industrial bank or the private investors, saying, hey, you know, oops, I made a mistake. I didn't know about the roof deck. And I mean, they don't want to hear it.
Right.
You know, so that's where if you are new to a project or new to it, if you're a new investor, you have to factor in there's going to be a delta, okay, and you've got to have those monies available, because if it's not there and you can't somehow muster it together, your project is dead. And that's when, you know, the sharks circling around will smell the blood in the water or taste the blood in the water and swoop in, because they know that you're in a very weak position. So, you know, that's sort of the thing about that. Okay.
On your private money portion, how did you structure that? Did you use a 506D or one of the other things from the Jobs Act? Or
No, I mean, for what I do for, you know, as I said, I have a joint venture program, okay, whereby I have private investors and they bring money, okay?
well, right, but
And,
what I'm saying is, in that joint venture program, the paperwork, was it a Reg 506D security
There are-
offering?
There are the paperwork for the joint venture program that I have are two things. One is the promissory note, and the second thing is the joint venture, what's it called, program itself, which is my promise to pay, in exchange for your money, this is what you're going to get from me, okay? And then there's a promissory note attached to that, and that's what we do.
Any other questions on the funding? All right, so we're on to the fun part.
The fun part.
Yeah, the fixing portion.
The fix-up portion. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I can talk all day on this one. The instrument. I talk a lot about the joint venture program. Okay, and to me, that is one of the reasons for my success. Okay, it's because this project could not have been done, period, without the assistance and participation of other people. Okay, this was not a creation by me, and so on. So essentially, I bought the house, as I said, through Frank. It's a pretty sad shape, and let's have a look. Over here, there was a, the DC housing when you come in, there's a little foyer.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a foyer here. Where this gentleman, what's your name? Where Bruce is, there's a door there. Okay, so what's your name is? Nicole. So if Nicole's where she is, and I'm here, she could not see me. Okay, there's a wall here. Okay, so Bruce opens the door. Okay, so where Bruce is, he opens the door, and then he has to. Then over here, there's a wall up to about here, I think. What's it?
Yeah.
You got get it right. There's a wall about to here. So what's your name?
Anthony.
So Anthony can now see me if I'm here, but nobody else can. Okay, she can't. These people can't. So he can see me. There's a wall here,
Right.
and then there's a wall here. A wall here, there's a door here into the dining room. So this is the living room.
Right.
There's a dining room here. Okay. Everyone got me so far? Okay. So we'll come in through here, and then we'll go upstairs by going up here, turning that way to go upstairs.
Yeah, most people are familiar with the old floor plans
Yeah.
where the stairs bisect the house, the spine of the house. You have to go up, turn, and go back. And I think you can see from how this floor plan is, whether you're in DC or you're in downtown Baltimore, everyone wants an open floor plan where you can come in like Joe just showed you, and you can see through to the kitchen and have a light come in with the windows throughout the floors of the house.
But I wanted to say that cause a lot of the houses in DC, you walk through the front door, there's stairs going up. Okay, this one wasn't like that. Okay, you have to come through here, and you got the landing, and then turn this way.
Yeah, got that.
Okay, and then towards the middle was the dining room, and the back was the kitchen. So that's the layout on the first floor. And the same thing for the second floor. The stairs is going that way. And if you go to the third floor, you enter the master in the bedroom. You follow me? Because the stairs is going this way.
Right.
Okay, so if we wanted to create a roof deck and kept the stairs the same way, you'd have to go to the master bedroom in order to go to the roof deck. Okay, so the only way to make it a communal roof deck was to reorient the stairs. Okay,
Yeah.
so that way when you go to the third floor, you're going this way.
Right.
Follow me? And then that way you can go to the roof deck without going through the bedroom.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the reason, that's the rationale behind that. But the point is that we had an architect, and the architect came up with a design, and and then he went off to DCRA to get the permits, and he's a great, really good architect, and he was able to get the permits through DCRA. I don't do DCRA, it's navigating that thing is just a minefield, and I'd rather not bother with it. I'd rather get somebody else who has the experience, who's got the relationship to get it done. So the architect got the building permit, okay, and then from there we then had to get the HVAC permits, the plumbing permits, the demo permits, plumbing, electrical, HVAC, demo. There's a bunch of permits we have to get for this house. And when I first started a few years ago, you used to kind of do a project, close the windows, and hopefully nobody will say anything. But that was when I was younger and naive. But I don't do that. I don't recommend you do that, especially in DC. It's just not worth the hassle. If you're going to do a project like this, you may as well get the permits. You should get the permits because people will call you in.
Yeah.
If they call you in, then they'll put a stop work order, and then you pay fines and so on. So it's just not worth it. So the idea is to assemble or surround yourself with a team that can do quality work and can pass inspections. Okay. So I have the contractors I use for this project. In fact, they do all my projects. They're great, fantastic folks. They know how to get the job done. All the work is permitted and inspected, and we always pass. Never an issue. Okay. So I've used them over a number of projects. So the architect comes up with a design, but the JV partners, this is the key here, they are real people, okay, and they can see things from different perspectives, okay. I, as an individual, can see the house as one way. Somebody else can see the house a different way, okay. So if we have, say, 4 or 5 people together, you can discuss and debate how we should design this house. Okay, and you get input from different people from different perspectives, as opposed to just me or just say from the inspector, the architect. So what you end up with is a product which is a culmination of lots of different minds. Okay, so the design that you see here was not because of me, was not because of the